مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم. مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم. يا أكرم الخلق ما لمن ألوذ به سواك عند حلول الحادث عمامي. ولن يضيق رسول الله جاهك بي إذا الكريم تحلى باسم منتقم. مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم. فإن من جودك الدنيا وضارتها ومن علومك علم اللوح والقلم. يا نفس لا تقنطي من زلة عظمت إلى الكبائر.
حمدا يوافي نعمه ويكافئ مزيدا. يا ربنا لك الحمد كما ينبغي لجلال وجهك ولعظيم سلطانك. سبحانك يا رب لا نحصي ثناء عليك أنت كما أثنيت على نفسك. وأصلي وأسلم على سيدي وحبيبي ونور قلبي محمد بن عبد الله وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي وبعد. In the last session we began by introducing the Quran, touching upon certain discussions that would normally be discussed in the science known as Ulum al-Quran, or Quranic sciences, that looks at the nature of the Quran, which is important for somebody who wants to try to understand the meanings of the Quran. You would assume automatically that such a person would need to understand the nature of the Quran itself and the nature of the book that they're dealing with. We defined the Quran, we looked at the definition of the Quran. We said Al-Quran Kalamullah, it's the speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which means it's eternal in nature. Although we said that what we recite and the books that we have are created, but we have Kalamullah al-Azali, we have the eternal uncreated speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which descended upon the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, which is recorded in books, transmitted by multiple chains, which we said this is a key aspect in terms of defining the Quran, is the tawatur of the Quran. Without that, we have nothing. With that, we have everything. The tawatur of the Quran, the fact that we have multiple chains, makes it absolutely certain and unquestionable and irrational to reject the Quran. It becomes irrational if somebody comes and says, how do I know that this book is from God? So we have multiple chains that trace it back to the Prophet. From there, we can trace it back to Revelation. But from here, from us now, the Hafiz reads it back to the Messenger, so we have multiple chains, and any rational human being would have to accept that. To claim now that it was made up and stagecraft, we say that's an irrational claim. You look at the concept of multiple chains, it becomes irrational. So this, in terms of understanding the Quran, is a key aspect of Tawatur of the Quran. We discussed that last time. And then it says the reciting which is worship incapacitates by even one chapter the i'jaz of the Quran. All of those are points that are discussed in extensive detail in Ulum al-Quran, Quranic science. We also mentioned that there are three phases of revelation. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's kalam, He spoke in eternality, which was free of time. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not connected to time. He's the creator of time. When He said, أَنَا الدَّهْرُ بِيَدِ اللَّيْلِ وَالنَّهَارِ, He said, do not abuse time, do not insult time, because I am time. In my control is the day and night. And He subhanahu wa ta'ala is independent of time, and He's not defined by time itself. But then when He spoke, He brought into the created, or He revealed into the created realm. And here there's a point I'd just like to pick out, which is very important in terms of Aqidah. In the notes here it says there were three stages in the descent of the Quran. The ulama of the Quran will say descent here. Normally language descent means what? It means something that comes from high down to low. So that doesn't apply to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because that necessitates now that we believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala physically is high. is in a high position, which we say is mustahil, it's impossible for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We do not believe He's above us in a physical sense. That's rejected by the ulama of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. So when they say descent, it means that He brings it into the created realm. He brings it into the created realm. Or they will say descent means that He gives it to Sayyidina Jibreel in the created realm who brings it down into Lawh al-Mahfuz. But what we do not say is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is sat up there and then it comes down into the created realm, because He does not sit and He's not fawq. He's not, in the literal sense, He's not above. So we said there are three stages to the descent of the Quran. The first is to Lawh al-Mahfuz. Lawh al-Mahfuz, the preserved tablet in which is contained knowledge of all that was and will be until the last day. But it doesn't contain all of the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You should not be confused or misunderstand the nature of the Lawh al-Mahfuz. There are some, unfortunately, who assume that the preserved tablet contains within all of the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Say it's mustahil, impossible. How can the created contain within the uncreated? It's impossible. It has within a qatra, just a tiny drop of the ocean of the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَلَوْ أَنَّمَا فِي الْبَحْرِ مِنْ أَقْلَامٍ. And if all of the ocean was ink for pens, and all of the trees in creation with the pens, it still would not contain the kalam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the Lawh al-Mahfuz is just qatra min qatarat Allah. It's just a drop from amongst the ocean of the unlimited, infinite ocean of the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it's part of the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when Imam al-Busiri in the Burda, for example, he says, وَمِنْ عُلُومِكَ عِلْمَ اللَّوْحِ وَالْقَلَمِ, there's no i'tirad, there's no objection whatsoever. That here he says, part of your knowledge is the knowledge of the pen and the knowledge of the preserved tablet, meaning that the knowledge of the messenger is greater than that. Some people will say, then how is that possible? Does that mean it's equal to the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? We say there's no comparison. But that's your misunderstanding of the nature of the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That you fail to understand the nature of Lawh al-Mahfuz. And we can easily, without any objection, say that the knowledge of the Prophet is greater than what's contained within the Lawh al-Mahfuz. So the Quran comes down and preserved within the Lawh al-Mahfuz. Then we said from there, in one go it comes down to Bayt al-Izzah, the house of honor, which is in the lowest heaven. And each of these descents took place on Ramadan, in the blessed month of Ramadan. And then from there it comes down to the Prophet over 23 years. Over 23 years, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَقُرْآنًا فَرَقْنَاهُ لِتَقْرَأَهُ عَلَى النَّاسِ عَلَى مُكْثٍ. This Quran, we spaced it out, we separated it so that you could recite it and rehearse it to people over time. And the ulama of the Quran will also mention that the Quran is unique. It's one of the khususiyat of the Quran. The Quran is unique, that all of the revelations came down in one go, except for the Quran. Except for the Quran. Every other revelation that came down to a prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to a messenger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, came down in one go, except for the Quran. Uniquely for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is spaced out over 23 years. And when you study the Quran, when you study Tafsir of the Quran, one of the amazing factors of the Quran and how it came down is, and here they will look at why did it take 23 years to come down. And interesting, not only that, the order of the Quran as it came down did not match up to the order of the Quran as we have it, nor to what's in the Lawh al-Mahfuz. The Lawh al-Mahfuz has the Quran in the order, from Surah Fatiha to Surah An-Nas. It comes down and spaced out. Surah Iqra comes, then other verses come, Surah Al-Muddathir, Muzammil, Wal-Duha, all these short parts of the Quran are coming down. None of them matching up. And as a general rule, you'll see, and this is recorded from Sayyidina Ali radhiyallahu anhu, as a general rule, the Quran comes down 5 verses at a time. It's rare, although you do get instances more than that, like 10 verses, like the first 10 verses, Surah Al-Mu'minun, Qad aflaha al-Mu'minun, 10 verses come. And in rare instances, a whole surah will come down, but that's very rare. The norm is 5 verses at a time. And Sayyidina Ali radhiyallahu anhu said, the Quran came down 5 verses at a time. Whoever wants to memorize the Quran and not forget it, he said, memorize 5 verses at a time. 5 verses at a time. I asked one of our teachers, does anybody do that now? Nobody. And if you want to, Sayyidina Ali is giving you a guarantee now. You want to memorize the Quran and never forget it, do it as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought it down. 5 verses at a time. You won't struggle after that. But there's nobody you'll find now who memorized the Quran 5 verses at a time, even though revelation came down in that manner. So why does it come down in this way, where it breaks the order of the Quran? One of the key reasons that it comes down is in order to deal with the issues that the Sahaba were facing in their life, in order to develop them as a community. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and this is an objection that was leveled by the Ahl al-Kitab towards the Prophet ﷺ. وَقَالَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا لَوْلَا نُزِّلَ هَذَا الْقُرْآنُ جُمْلَةً وَاحِدًا. Why didn't this Qur'an come down in one go? And if they had the mafhum, they had the understanding, in previous revelations it came down in one go, but it's not coming down in one go. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives a reason. كَذَلِكَ لِنُثَبِّتَ بِهِ فُؤَادَكَ. كَذَلِكَ لِنُثَبِّتَ بِهِ فُؤَادَكَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives one reason. The ulama of Quran mention other reasons as well, which are also extracted from the Quran, to make it easy for you to accept, to make it easy for you to strengthen your heart, to make it easy for you to accept. وَرَتَّلْنَاهُ تَرْتِيلًا. And here the Sahaba, the Quran came down to deal with instances in the lives of the Sahaba, and that's one of the things that's unique about the Sahaba. And when we talk about the generation of the Sahaba, there's no other generation like them. One of the unique factors, and this is why when you look at usul al-fiqh, legal theory, there's an ikhtilaf, there's a difference between the madahib, the legal schools, over what sources can be used as a proof. You have an agreement, Quran, Sunnah, Ijma', consensus, and Qiyas, and logical deduction. After that you have an ikhtilaf about what other sources can be used. Amongst those sources that are debated is what they refer to as fatwa sahabi, the fatwa of a sahabi. If a sahabi passes a fatwa on a matter, is the mujtahid bound to accept that or not? Sayyidina Imam Shaykh, he said no. He said he made a judgment, I can make a judgment. Imam Abu Hanif said absolutely bound to accept his statements. If a sahabi gives a fatwa and there's no hadith on the matter, and there's no alternative opinion or contradictory opinion from another sahabi, Abu Hanif rahmatullah says we're bound to accept that. The mujtahid cannot speak about that on that matter. And that's why it's recorded from Imam Abu Hanif, he said, إِنْ جَاءَنَا مِنْ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ فَعَلَى الرَّأْسِ وَالْعَيْنِ. If something comes from the Messenger, we submit completely. وَإِنْ جَاءَنَا مِنَ الصَّحَابَةِ اتَّبَعْنَاهُ. And something comes from the Sahaba, we follow them completely. We follow them. And what's the reason behind it? His argument was that when they give fatwa on a matter, their fatwa is not the same as anybody else's fatwa. Even the Tabi'in. Why? Because he said they witnessed revelation as it came down. And not just that they witnessed revelation came down because of them. Revelation came down in response to their situations, problems that they were having. Look at a famous example, Sayyidah Khawla bin Tha'lab. Her husband says to her, you to me are like the back of my mother. Zihar, which in Jahiliyyah before Islam was divorce. But it was divorce. And if a man compared his wife to the back, or to a part that's haram for him to look, of a woman that's haram for him to marry, if he did that, it becomes a talaq in Jahiliyyah, it became a talaq, a divorce before Islam. But it was different to a normal divorce. The woman was left suspended, she was left in limbo. He had no further responsibility towards her. But she could not go and remarry, she was left in difficulty. She was left with nobody to take care of her. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this Sayyidah Khawla bin Tha'lab radiyallahu anha, when this happens to her husband says that, Sayyidina Salman ibn al-Aqwa, when he says that to her, she goes to the Prophet and complains that he's left me like that. The Prophet said, I can't say anything. And he didn't pass a judgment there. He wouldn't cancel and abolish the statements of the husband. So she says, I'm going directly to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And she calls Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قَدْ سَمِعَ اللَّهُ قَوْلَ الَّتِي تُجَادِلُكَ فِي زَوْجِهَا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has heard the statements of the one who's discussed with you about her husband. And what's amazing here, that revelation comes down directly in response to her case. And that's why Sayyidina Umar in his time, he's with some of the leading Sahaba people around him. And he stops because he sees an old woman, and he goes there, lowers his head and listens to her for a period of time. And then after a period of time he comes back, and he said, an old woman, and he's stopping there to listen to her. And he said, that old woman is the woman that revelation came down for. That's Sayyid Khawla bin Tha'lab. He said, if she kept me here for days and days, I would have stayed here, except to go and pray. And here the point being what? They are a unique generation, the Sahaba. Revelation comes down in response to them. Sayyidina Abdullah bin Mas'ud said, every single verse in the Quran, I know where it was revealed and why it was revealed. Those are people who have complete knowledge of the Quran. And his student said, I read the Quran 3 times. He did 3 khatm of the Quran with Abdullah bin Mas'ud. And he said, every single verse, I stopped him and asked him, where was it revealed and why was it revealed? A complete understanding of the Quran. So that's part of the reason why it's revealed in such a manner over 23 years. Because now the Quran comes down to deal with them. Another key factor in terms of why it takes so long to reveal, and this is very important in terms of da'wah, very important in terms of da'wah to new Muslims. There was a report yesterday in the Independent where there was surprise about the number of people who become Muslim. Some of them now saying 100,000 converts in England. All of that places a massive onus upon us, because in reality they become Muslims despite us, not because of us. Not because of us, despite us they're becoming Muslims. No. But here when we look at Revelation, remember the overwhelming majority of the Sahaba were converts. People who came into Islam, chose Islam. Sayyidina Abu Bakr, Sayyidina Umar, Sayyidina Uthman, Sayyidina Ali, even though he was a child, he chose to become Muslim. The overwhelming majority of the Sahaba chose to become Muslim. They were not born into Muslim families. And the Quran, one of the key aspects of the revelation of the Quran is that it comes down to take them out of Jahiliyyah into the light of Islam. And it deals with them accordingly. Like we're not going to do this, but if you look at the Meccan and the Madani surahs of the Quran, the Makki surahs, the vast majority of the Makki surahs, the first 9-10 surahs of the Quran, Surah Baqarah, Surah Ali Imran, Surah Ma'idah, Surah Nisa, all the way up to Surah Al-Anfal, Surah Bara'ah. All of these are Madani surahs. And the first surah that came down in Medina was Surah Al-Baqarah. The last one that comes down is Surah Bara'ah. What's unique about them as opposed to the Makki surahs? Makki surahs, the last juz, virtually all of the last part of the last juz of the Quran is Makki. The whole of the 29th juz of the Quran came down in Mecca. Look at the distinction, look at the distinctive style of revelation. There's not a single legal ruling that comes down in Mecca. Read the whole of the 30th juz, you won't find a single hukm shar'i. You won't find a single legal ruling. Read the whole of juz 29, you'll only find one legal ruling in there, which is what? Ya ayyuhal muzammil qumil layla illa qalila. Qum fa'anzir. Worship, pray. And according to the majority of the ulama, the only order that came down in Mecca was that they were required to pray. When was 5 daily prayers required of them? After Laylat al-Isra wal-Mi'raj, when it comes down the next day, Dhuhr time, he starts praying the Dhuhr. And then the Asr, Maghrib, Isha, with Jibreel for 2 consecutive days leading them in prayer, showing that these are the prayer timelines. Prior to that, for almost like 8 years, 8 years prior to that, what's he praying? The generally held opinion is 2 prayers, 2 rak'ah, morning and night, in accordance with the prayer of Sayyidina Ismail alayhi salam, Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam. No legislation comes down. What's it all about? Removing kufr from their hearts. Removing kufr from their hearts. Letting them know about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, tawheed, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is one. Letting them know about heaven and hell. Letting them know that there's a hisab, that they're going to have to face their Lord. Letting them know the severe punishment if they slip. Letting them know about... And then when you get into Medina, you see a complete change, turnaround. 13 years in Mecca, not a single rule except for prayer. Then in Medina, it drastically changes. The whole thing changes now completely. Now you got rule after rule after rule coming down. Read Surah Baqarah, read all of these surahs. And you got rule after rule coming down. Why is that happening? Because the Quran is taking these unbelievers who became believers, the Sahaba, and taking them such that when the legislation comes down, it's easy for them to accept. They have no objection whatsoever. When Sahaba were about to put alcohol to their mouth, when they hear, they'll throw it down, and the streets of Mecca, Medina flowing with alcohol. No difficulty whatsoever. And in that you have a divine lesson, how you deal with people who come into Islam. You don't ban them with a whole set of legislation. That's not the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala dealt with the Sahaba. You bring them into Tawheed, you bring them into light of belief, into light of Iman. You wean them and rid from their heart and uproot from their heart the darkness of kufr. So there you see why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives the Quran to them over 23 years. And significant is a statement to say that Aisha radhiyallahu anha, she said, in Mecca, there was not a single verse that came down saying don't drink, don't fornicate, don't lie. So that all came down in Medina. So if it had come down in Mecca, they would never have accepted Islam. They would never have accepted Islam. And which is why you see some people, they go to a convert and pull out a list, say you've got to do all of this. So how long is he going to last? How long is he going to last? That's not prophetic in nature. That's not divine in nature. And we do not say, here there's a slight difference, because Allah says, Al-Yawma akmaltu lakum dinakum. Your religion is complete. So we're not going to say, no, it's not followed upon him to pray for 13 years. It's not followed upon him to fast for 13 years. We're not going to say that. We're going to say, give him rope, give him time, let him develop. If he misses prayers for that, he will have to do qada of them. The hukm shara'i is now binding upon him. But we don't throw everything upon him in one instance and expect him to rise to the highest level of faith overnight when he's in the depths of kufr. But now we move on. That's part of what we covered last time, and it's important to know the background to the Quran, because when you know the background to the Quran, it really opens up the Quran to you. It really opens up the Quran. There are many secrets to the Quran that are closed if a person doesn't study the Quran. And here, in Ulum al-Quran, they will look at a whole section about Asma' of Surah, the names of surahs. You've got a massive discussion about the names of surahs. Why? Because they'll say the name itself was chosen by the Prophet ﷺ. And in that is a secret that will tell you the underlying theme behind that surah. When we look at Al-Fatiha, when we look at Al-Baqarah, when you look at Baqarah, the cow, what's the cow got to do with anything? It only comes in a short section in Surah Baqarah. But they say every single ayah in Surah Baqarah comes back to that point. Every single aspect of the surah. But it requires us now to dive into the ocean of Surah Al-Baqarah. Like you read the ayat al-talaq, like the second spine, so towards the latter half, the second half of the second juz, you get rule after rule of divorce. What's that got to do with the cow? So it's got everything to do with it. In reality, there's more rules to do with talaq, divorce, than in Surah Talaq itself. It's all tied into Baqarah. It's all tied into Baqarah, the cow. But it requires us now to look. The more and more you dive into the Quran, the more and more oceans will open up to a person. And nothing in the Quran is random. Nothing in the Quran whatsoever is random. Now here we're looking in terms of opening up the secrets of the Quran. How do you open up secrets of the Quran? That's what we move on to next, the etiquettes with the Quran. Because as we mentioned last time, we said that etiquette, akhlaq, adab, character and etiquettes, say, is shart kamal lil mu'min. It's miftah li talib al-ilm. And if you want to become a believer at the highest level of faith, akhlaq is fundamental. Character and etiquette is fundamental. Because the Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ لِأُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ I was only sent to perfect lofty character. And he also said, those who will be closest to me in Yawm al-Qiyamah, أَحَاسِنُكُمْ أَخْلَاقًا Those who have the best of character will be closest to him in Yawm al-Qiyamah. So akhlaq, he says, shart kamal, it's part of the perfection. You can be a believer without etiquette. You can be a believer without good character. So you're not a perfect believer. The greatest praise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave to the Prophet in the Quran was what? وَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ وَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ You can praise whatever you want about the Messenger. And you should praise. As the poet said, every praise of the Messenger that you give to him will always be deficient. Even if you go to extremes and exaggerate, it will always be deficient. Why? إِذِ اللَّهُ أَثْنَى عَلَيْهِ بِمَا هُوَ أَهْلُ When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala praised him with that which was befitting for him, what is your praise going to be of the Messenger? It's always going to, don't ever think that you've done something for the Messenger, you praised him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala praised him. And he said, وَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ You will never match that. But here, what's the point? What did he say about him? He didn't talk about his knowledge. His knowledge was perfect. He didn't talk about his patience. His patience was perfect. All of these beautiful qualities that he had, he spoke about his character. The perfection of the Prophet, and the greatest praise, he mentioned his character. That's why we say character is shart al-kamal al-mu'min. It's a sign of perfection of the believer. But for talib al-ilm, it's miftah. It's a key. You will never, as a student of knowledge, and particularly those who pursue the path of sacred knowledge, seeking knowledges of sharia, if you do not have khuluq, you will never attain knowledge. And that's why they'll say the person who does not have khuluq, the student who does not have character and adab towards ulama, towards kutub, books, towards anything to do with knowledge, you say he's mahroom min al-ilm. You'll be deprived and the doors of knowledge will be closed off to you. However hard you try, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, ittaqullaha wa yu'allimukumullah. It's not your brain that will get you that knowledge. It's not like your effort that will get you that knowledge. The final key to allow you to attain the highest levels of the secrets of the Quran and secrets of sacred knowledge is how you interact with knowledge itself. How you interact with knowledge itself. If you have the highest adab with knowledge, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will open doors that you would never attain just through your own understanding. You would never attain through your own hard efforts. That's why Imam al-Salakhsi, the great Hanafi jurist, he said, مَا نِلْنَاهُ إِلَّا بِالتَّعْظِيمِ. We only attained this, the great rank that he got to. And Imam Salakhsi was an amazing... You have, in the Hanif madhab here, you have the 6 books, which are known as Zahir al-Riwayah, the 6 books that Imam Muhammad al-Shaybani, he recorded, with all the statements, virtually all the statements Imam Hanif recorded in there. 6 books, which are called Zahir al-Riwayah, the primary narration of the madhab. These were then condensed into a book called Al-Kafi by Imam al-Hakim al-Shaheed. Al-Kafi summarized the 6 books in one book. Imam al-Salakhsi, who was from Central Asia, he was in a small town, and in that town there was a tyrant, an evil leader who used to oppress the people of that town. And the people of that town went and complained to the scholar of the town to intercede on their behalf. So they went and asked, the Imam Salakhsi went to the leader and asked him to stop being unjust towards the people and stop abusing them. He got in prison because of that. Like now what we would consider solitary confinement. He was placed in a ditch, nobody around him, a deep ditch, he was lowered into it, he wasn't allowed access to anybody. What happens then? His students sat around at the top of that ditch, and he now starts dictating classes. He now starts teaching them a commentary from memory on the Kafi. This Kafi, which is a summary of the 6 books of the method, he produces from memory what we now have as a 25-volume work, all of it from memory, called Mabsut Imam Salakhsi. All of it from memory. A phenomenal human being. What did he say about that? We only attain this level because of veneration. What did they say about him? It's recorded that one night he suffered diarrhea. He had to go to the toilet. He said 17 times he had to go. And he said every time he went, he did a fresh wudu and he would not touch his book that he was revising without wudu. Imam al-Zarnuji in his book on the etiquettes of the student said it's fard for the student when he touches the book to be in a state of wudu. That's not normal. Normally it's mustahab to recommend it, because that only applies to the Quran. Quran is fard. Other books it's not fard, so not for the students. Why? Because ta'zeem is what opens it up. The honour that you give to knowledge. And that's why in Barak al-Falah he says, well, you got a pencil there, you sharpen that pencil, he says, don't throw the sharpening away in the bin. Not even the pencil sharpening. Like what's that about? Ta'zeem. Because he said the pen is a tool of knowledge. That sharpening is from the pen, which is a tool of knowledge. Just as you don't throw Quran in the bin, likewise said you don't throw pencil sharpened from a pencil into the bin. Nobody would even think about that. That's why they attain what they attain. And that's why we don't get to that level. Because they have ta'zeem for even the smallest matters. They have veneration and honour for even the smallest of matters. So you have to have the utmost etiquette with the Quran. One of my teachers in Damascus, and I think this is quite kind of humorous in one way. I went to a class with this, and he had a box of milk tray. And I said, how do you get a box of milk tray in Damascus? And he said there was a student from England who came and he brought him a box of milk tray from England. I said, although you can't get stuff like that, right? So he gave them out amongst the students, and when he finished, I took the box and I was about to throw it in the bin. He said, don't do that. I said, why? He said, because it's got writing on it. And he said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swears, وَالْقَلَمِ وَمَا يَسْطُرُونَ, by the pen and by that which you write. So the written word is sacred with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even though it's nothing, it's a box, we're just writing the chocolate box. He had so much respect for it, he wouldn't put it in the bin. And he said, anything that's got writing, he said, I'll gather up and I'll bury it, just as I'll bury the Quran. That's why people reach such levels, because the etiquettes that they have with knowledge. And more so, we should have etiquettes with the Quran. Because knowledge at one level, yes, you'll not attain it. But Quran, and here the difficulty with the Quran is hujjatan alayk. It becomes a proof against you. Now, knowledge is one thing, provided you studied and you've learned your obligatory sciences. And in a sense, you can get away with, if somebody didn't have that lofty etiquette with knowledge and he didn't care about it, he walked into a class, he disrupted classes, he didn't care, he would talk over his teacher in the class, all these, like Sayyidina Ali, for example, he mentioned in the class, parts of the etiquette teachers, and I mention this because too many students from England, they have bad etiquettes in classes. Like one of the things they say, if a person walks into a class, you do not give salams. Everybody does it. Walks in or gives salams, says you do not give salams. And if somebody gives salams, the students and the teacher should not respond. Why? Because salams, you're disturbing the class. The prophetic inheritance that's being distributed, you're disturbing them. That's more important than you coming and giving salams. The fard that's being given out is lesser than the wajib or the sunnah of you giving salams. But too many of us will do that, we'll disrupt the class. We'll disrupt the class by walking in late. We'll disrupt one of the constant bad etiquettes. And Sayyidina Ali mentions this, and he says, like, you never mention the opinion of another teacher in the presence of your teacher. And I hear this all the time. They'll say, Shaykh, but this Shaykh said that and that Shaykh said that. Sayyidina Ali says, you never say that in the presence of your teacher. That's considered bad etiquette. And all of these things are considered hirman in terms of knowledge. All of these things, if anybody wants to look at that, along with Imam Zarnuji's book on the etiquettes of knowledge, read At-Tibyan fi Adabi Hamalat al-Quran, Imam Nawawi's, which is translated into English, the etiquettes of the Quran. The last section in there, he lists out all the etiquettes that should be in place with the students. And particularly he mentions there 10 etiquettes that Sayyidina Ali who mentions. 10 etiquettes that, like for example, you see this as well. Sayyidina Ali, he says, when you walk into a gathering and your shaykh or your teacher is there, so you give him salams first, and then you give everybody else salam. Like some people, I see this regularly, they'll go, there's a shaykh there, they'll start from the right and go around and say, the right is in the absence of a person of fadl. In the absence of a person of honour and stature. Like if your father's there, you don't start on the right, because your father has preference over the right. If the teacher's there, you don't start on the right. You start on the right if there's nobody else there over and above. If everybody's on a par, then you start on the right. But anything else, you do not start on the right. No. Out of etiquette and respect for the shaykh, for the alim. Why? Why do you respect him? Because of what he carries and what he conveys. Not because of him per se. Why is it one of the etiquettes of the alims that you kiss his hand? Out of respect for him. Because the alim, although it's recommended, but it increases a connection and a ties between you and that shaykh, and so much more comes to you from that. Why have that high respect and lofty respect with anything connected to knowledge? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because of your etiquette, will pass knowledge to you. Now, so particularly here we need to look at etiquette with the Quran in particular, because we said knowledge is one thing, although it's important, it's one thing. Quran's a totally different discussion. It's a higher, the etiquette with the Quran should be even more than just the etiquette with normal knowledge. Because it's Kalamullah. Because it's your guidance. It's guidance lil muttaqeen, for the people of taqwa. So therefore your etiquette should be even higher, even loftier with the Quran than anything else. So now here we're going to say, somebody's now going to come and sit down to read the Quran. First and foremost, we'll say, and I think it's going to come here, you should always have a regular habit in terms of reading the Quran. Have a wird with the Quran. And that wird should never be lost. Should never be lost. No. If you've got adhkar that you're reading, You read them, fair enough, and you have regular times, but that does not compensate for Quran. That will never compensate for Quran. If you've got occupations, like you've got to go to college, you've got to go to work, whatever the excuse is, it never compensates for the Quran. Because a person's mahroom, he's distant from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If a whole day goes without him reading Quran. And he's mahroom, and he's distant if a whole days without even looking at the Quran. Because Sayyidah Aisha says, part of the rights of the Quran upon you is that every single day you look at it. And that's the first step to actually reading it. Because you look at it in order to read it. The Prophet said, as an act of worship is looking at the Mus'haf. Just even looking at it is an act of worship. But we don't stop at looking, we read it. And that has to be daily practice, man.
Do we understand from that the word of the Quran means tilawa from Alhamd to An-Nas, or just, for instance, is it sufficient to say, I read Surah Al-Mulk every evening, I read Surah Al-Ikhlas every night before I go to bed, and is that sufficient to
That's not sufficient. That's not sufficient. I mean, that's got to be a given for every single believer. And you've got certain parts of the Quran that every believer should be reading. Surah Yasin, every single day a person should read. And there should be no day that goes without reading Surah Yasin. Ideally twice a day. Surah Al-Mulk, like you mentioned, the three Quls, Ayatul Kursi, all of these, they should be a given for a person. That's not the word we're talking about. Now here we're talking about a word over and above, and you should have a word of Khatam Quran. That's what we're talking about. Because if you talk about that now and say, okay, I've done it, what's going to happen is going to be a months and months passing without you doing a Khatam Quran. And then what will happen? A year will pass without you finishing the Quran. Years will go. What do you become then? You fall under the statements of the Messenger on the Day of Judgment. Ya Rabbi inna qawmi ittakhadhu hadha al-Qur'ana mahjura. My Lord, my people abandon the Quran. And so don't think Surah Al-Mulk saves you in the grave. Ayatul Kursi and these, they protect you for that night. But your relationship with the Quran is not based upon them. And here you have to have a regular reading of the Quran, where you have a target. And that's what we're talking about. Where the separate of these? These are there, they must be there. Over and above that, every day you read a page of the Quran. Half of the Quran you read more than that, minimum 1 page a day. 1 juz a day, minimum 1 juz a day. Should be more than that for a half of the Quran. But that's over and above. If you're not doing that, you're in danger with the Quran. Imam Abu Hanif, Imam Al-Azam, he said, minimum once every 6 months you should do a Khatam al-Quran. And that's the bare minimum. When you go beyond that, you're in danger. Because now, Hablullah al-Mateen is cut from you. And here you've got a strong, powerful rope to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Provide, if you got that, you're somewhere, that's cut now. That's cut. And that's why I'll say this here, because particularly in England, too many Muslims cannot read the Quran. There's too many Muslims who are illiterate with the Quran. Open a Mus'haf, they're struggling. They're struggling to read the Quran. That's got to be rectified straight away. And here when people come and hear like an institute like this, people are talking about, we're learning Fard Ayn. So you learn fiqh, you learn some Aqidah, you learn something like this, although this is not technically Fard Ayn. So if you can't read the Quran, so that's your priority. And what type of relationship can you have with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without the Quran? That's got to be there along with every single Fard Ayn. I mean, here then we have a problem as well, particularly in the Pakistani and the Indian communities, is that, okay, some may, but the Makharij al-Huruf is awful. They're not reading it properly. That's also got to be rectified. And the Quran is a significant matter. It shouldn't be treated lightly. Like, here we should be a community that's tied to the Quran. That's tied to the Quran with a link that cannot be cut, that cannot be broken. So here, the first thing here we're talking about, following on from the question, every single one of us must have a wird of the Quran over and above what the brothers mentioned. Every single day, 5 verses, 10 verses, a page, and you build upon that. You should have in your mind a set time period when you're going to do Khatam al-Quran. And you should have regular Khatamat of the Quran. You should have regular Khatam of the Quran. We're going to touch upon Khatam of the Quran because it's very important. Khatamat, you should be communities where there's Khatams of Quran taking place all the time. Like look at, if you read the biographies of the Salaf al-Salih, the early Muslims, the righteous ones, and it's mind-blowing what they did with the Quran. You just think, nah, it's not possible what they did. It's impossible. It almost comes to the realms of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took, Asatir al-Awwaleen. These are just fables that you, it's almost like some of us get to the point now we look and say, nah, it's not possible. It's like somebody making up stories. Had it not been because we knew who they were, we would not have believed these. Because we know that these are people who never lie about the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're not going to make this up. Like take Sayyidina Imam al-A'zam, Abu Hanifa, he died in the place where he was imprisoned the last 2 years of his life. And the Khalifa had him poisoned and he died in his prison cell. It's recorded 7,000 Khatam al-Qur'ans he did at the place that he died. 7,000. Now work that out now, how much he do in a day? 7. But this is the same human being. Yeah, he's recorded as Imam Nawawi mentions that he mentions 6 people who did the Khatam al-Qur'an in one rak'ah, and he does it inside the Kaaba. Imam Abu Hanifa in one rak'ah. The whole Qur'an from beginning to end. It's actually quite funny. One man says, I came to Baghdad to ask Abu Hanifa Masala fiqh, and he said, it's after Isha prayer. So he said, I see him gets up to pray Nafil now. He said, I was waiting for him. He said, he starts reading Surah Baqarah. And then he said, I was waiting. And he gets onto Ali Imran. And he says, he keeps on going. And he said, he kept on going all night until he finished the whole Qur'an. In one rak'ah. That's for us is Asatir al-Awwaleen. That's just fables now. I mean, alhamdulillah, you hear the odd occasion now where there are people who still do something like that. So alhamdulillah, there's still a connection to the Qur'an. But that should be a norm. And maybe not to the level, because those were special human beings. They were unique human beings. But we should have something like that. That's something we should instill within our children. You have a Khatam al-Qur'an regularly. And we teach it ourselves, and we teach our children, and we teach our families Qur'an. That's got to be a rope that's tight. And particularly because now we're in a time where the non-Muslims are trying to cut the rope of Qur'an from Muslims. I know now in Syria, it's happening even in Muslim lands. In Syria now, in the school curriculum, they're taking Qur'an out of it. It's unheard of in Muslim lands. They're taking Qur'an now, and Syria is a land where Qur'an is like, they preserve Qur'an, they've got teachers of Qur'an everywhere. Like Egypt, same thing. They're taking Qur'an out of the syllabus in the school. What's going to happen? You're going to have a generation cut off from the Qur'an. It becomes a pressing an issue, a burning issue for every single person. We have to have wird of Qur'an, khatamat of Qur'an. I'll tell you one thing Imam Nawawi mentioned. Imam Bukhari's story is amazing. Imam Nawawi says in Kitab al-Adhkar, in the book of Remembrances, he mentions there the different narrations that have come to me about people who were listening to the Qur'an. He said the general norm of the Sahaba and the Tabi'een was every month, which is where you get the Sparah now, the juz of the Qur'an, every month. They divided up so that they had a marker by which they knew. The juz, the Sparah, it was not from the Prophet, and they set it out, so they knew how much to read a day. He said some did it more than that, some finished it every 10 days. Said some did it more than that, every 7 days, every week, and that's where you get the hizb of the Qur'an from. Every 7 days they did Khatam al-Qur'an. Said some did more than that, some did it every 4 days, some did it every 3 days, some did it every 2 days, some did it daily. Abu Hanifa did it daily, Shaykh did it daily, Imam Bukhari did it daily. These are recorded every day. Abu Hanifa Shaykh increases it now to twice a day in Ramadan. So in a month, normal month, they're doing 30 Khatam of the Qur'an. Some of us in a lifetime might not do that. In Ramadan, 60 Khatam al-Qur'an that they do in Ramadan. But then he goes more than that. He said that he came across people who've done it twice, 2 Khatams a day. Some did it 4. He said the most that he came across was, he said there's an individual, and he mentioned him by name. He said he did 8 Khatam al-Qur'an in one day. He said that's not possible. That's not possible. How can somebody do that? There's not enough time in the day to do that. He did it. He didn't lie. These are righteous people. They wouldn't lie about matters like this. He did it. What's that telling you here now? They had awrad with the Qur'an. And that's the first thing you take away from Qur'an, is that you must have a set with the Qur'an. The normal, I think we're going to mention is the norms with Muslims, and particularly in the lands of Islam, is that you have set times for that. What are the times of Qur'an? Fajr and Maghrib. Fajr and Maghrib. Particularly Fajr. Fajr is the time we should be reading Qur'an. Along with your awrad, Qur'an Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Inna Qur'an al-Fajr kana mashhooda, that the Qur'an al-Fajr is witnessed by whom? By the angels of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They are there specifically. And if you look at all of the prayer times, Fajr is the lightest in the number of prayers that you pray. Like look, you go to Dhuhr, you do 4 sunnah before, you do 4 fard, you do 2 sunnah, you do 2 nafil. When you pray your Asr, you do 4 sunnah, you do 4 fard. When you pray Maghrib, you do 3 fard, you do 2 sunnah, you can do 2 nafil, you can do awabin as well, 6 or 8 rakat awabin. When you go to Isha, you've got a whole load of prayers to pray there. Sunnahs and nafil if you include them, and witr as well. Fajr, it's as light as you get. 2 sunnah. And even though sunnah, the sunnah of these sunnah is you keep them brief. The Prophet will pray the mu'awwidhatayn, falaq an-nas, and these keep them brief. And then fard of Fajr, it's slightly long, but it's only 2 rak'ah. And the whole of that time it's makruh to pray any nafil or sunnah. Makruh to pray any sunnah or nafil in the whole of the Fajr time. Why? Because that's waqt al-Qur'an. The whole point of the Fajr time is Qur'an. It's awrad, it's dhikr. It's time for you. Yani what's the point of this? Why is that time exclusively for awrad and adhkar and Qur'an? Because you're going to face a day in front of you. That day, that's your energy that you get now for that day. That's your spiritual energy you get for that day. Ideally, now if you look at a Muslim, the ideal, how should you have woken up? Tahajjud. That's the ideal. You start off the day with Tahajjud, Fajr, Qur'an, Adhkar. If you do that, I'll guarantee your day is a good day. I'll guarantee you that, because the Prophet has given you that guarantee. When you don't pray Tahajjud, you've lost something significant with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then if you struggle with your Fajr, and unfortunately many of us won't even pray Fajr on time, what happens? Shaitan is over your ear, and he's urinated into your ear. He's urinated into your ear, and the ulama say that's not majaz. That's not figurative language. Just imagine you're lying down in bed and somebody came and urinated into your ear. Just imagine a human being came and did that. How are you going to react? Say Iblis did it. He did that, and that's the foulest of the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The filthiest of creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala came and urinated in your ear. No wonder you wake up in a groggy state when you're not. Why is it when you pray Fajr you don't feel good, you don't feel it? Who's just urinated in your ear? That's bound to have an effect on you. And how do you get, this is all having an effect, and then you didn't do your adhkar, you didn't reach what he asked you, you're going to have a bad day. You're going to guarantee you'll have a bad day after that. And here, and I'll mention another point here. A lot of people say, I go to work, okay, I work in an office, I work in a hospital, I work as a GP, whatever I work as. One of the things, I used to work as well. I worked at an office, I worked as a housing officer. And one thing I remember, when you go to work, being around non-Muslims, and however politically correct you want to be, being around non-Muslims has a damaging effect on your iman. It saps out of you any faith, or not faith here because you're still a mu'min, the thamarat, the sweetness of faith, the halawat of iman, it's sapped out of you. You come back like a spiritual zombie. And particularly if you're somebody, mashallah, has some type of spiritual inclination, you'll feel that more. You'll feel a lot more. I remember when I come back from work, it's as if your soul has just been killed. It's been emptied out completely. So like people come and say, how do you deal with that? Say, you have to ensure that your adhkar and your awrad and your Qur'an and your salah is in place. Because that's charging your battery for the day. And then your battery it's been taken out, it's been sapped out, recharge it at night. When you come back, I remember, and if I didn't go to a class, if I didn't go to masjid, if I didn't do something, it was because some people come home and they're tired and they relax, they'll have food, they'll rest up, sit there, watch the box for the rest of the night, so you're dead. You're dead at that point. Because it was all taken out of you, and you're just adding more filth into it. You're adding more filth into it. You need to recharge yourself now. It was taken out of you. You filled it up in the morning. It was taken out of you. Fill it back up now. And every single day you have to do that. Because you have to work. Especially if you're a man, you have to. Woman doesn't need to wear. It's not followed upon her, but it's followed upon a man to wear. You have to do that. You have to expose yourself to that. You're in that office environment, you're around women. You wouldn't have to be, in a normal situation, you wouldn't put yourself in that situation, avoid that. But you're getting affected now being around haram. So you charge yourself up before and charge yourself after. That's why the Quran becomes very significant. That's why if you're not going, because what did the Prophet say about Quran? Yasin, it's qalbul Quran, it's the heart of the Quran, and that's why they say that the heart of the Quran should be in the heart of every single believer. And there's some riwayat said that the Prophet said, I wish that every single Muslim would memorize Surah Yasin. So fulfill the desire of the Messenger. He wanted you to have that, so have it. Because he desires that for you. And he only desires it because of you, not because of himself. So memorize Surah Yasin. Every single morning read Surah Yasin. Read your one page of the Quran. Do your adhkar. Go. You'll be in a good state. You'll be in a good state. And as you work, and do a lot of istighfar. Because that can neutralize the effect of what you're facing. So here the point of all of that, your awrad with the Quran, your wird with the Quran is very important. Without that, hablullah mateen is maqtoo. You've cut that rope that you've got to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So first and foremost, the first etiquette with the Quran is that you have a wird with the Quran. That you go away. Those who don't do it, do it. Those who are doing it, maintain it. And increase. Your wird with the Quran should never be in decrease. It should always be increased. It should never go into decrease. For example, today, you decide that every single morning I read one page of the Quran. That's good. After Fajr, I read one page of the Quran. That's good. That should never decrease. It should always increase. Method now 40 days without a break, you've done it. A month has gone, another month's gone, you've done it, you maintain, you don't increase it now. Because the believer is always in a state of increase. You don't stagnate, because stagnating and remaining where you're at is regression. Because you're either going to progress or regress. There's never a neutral state for a believer. Never a neutral state spiritually for a believer. Because the Prophet said, any believers whose 2 days yastawiyan fahuwa maghboon. Any two believers 2 days are the same, he's a loser. He's a loser. Any believers 2 days are the same. Compare today and yesterday. And here, think about if it's equal, neutral, you're a loser. Let alone if it regressed. If you did worse than what you did yesterday. And here the Prophet said every single day you should be an increase. You should be increasing. It should never be on a par. So you say, okay, you read the same page and you're increasing another thing. Now increase, stop, keep on adding more and more until never reduce. Never reduce what you're doing with the Quran. And you make that wajib upon yourself. You make the Quran wajib upon yourself. No. Wajib upon yourself meaning what? That if you miss it out, you do qada of it. You do qada of it. I missed my page today, khalas, tomorrow I'm doing 2 pages to compensate for what I missed. Because once you treat it as it's nothing, it's optional, I don't need to do it, it means you won't do it. It means you won't do it. The moment you start treating it as, I've got a choice of doing it or not doing it, you won't do it. The moment you say, I have to do it, and if I don't do it, I'm going to compensate for it, I'm going to do qada of it, then you'll keep on top of it all the time. Likewise, not only do you treat it as lazim upon yourself, nothing comes between you and the prayer at that time. Nothing comes between you, and the Quran at that time. For example, you set yourself that, okay, after Fajr I read Yasin and I read my awrad. Okay, every day after Maghrib I read a page of the Quran. Nobody disturbs you at that time. Nobody disturbs you at that time. And I know, like for example in Yemen, I know that the Mashaykh, they will roam around the streets looking for anybody who's out of in the mosque, read the Quran. And here they'll impose that upon people. In the mosque, read Quran. At Maghrib. So if that's your time now that you're reading Quran, Maghrib is your time, nothing else occupies you at that time. Nothing, the phone off at that time. Phones is one of the biggest problems that we have from coming to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because you've got it on when you're reading your adhkar. You've got it on when you read. You've got it on in the class as well. Why? Just in case somebody phones. That means you're not here, you're there. You're there with your phone. Like, couldn't something wait for an hour? Couldn't something wait for the page that you're reading the Quran? Couldn't you switch it off? That's one of our problems now with mobile phones. There was a time where people lived without having to know what everybody else was doing every single moment of time. People lived perfectly fine before mobile phones. And here we're saying, don't let it disturb your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you're in the majlis of dhikr, you're in the majlis of salawat, you're reading your Quran, you're in the dance, switch it off. Be completely there. Be completely with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at that time. No? I mean, the worst thing now, even in prayers, our phones are going off now. One of the worst things that are happening in the masjid now, most of it everywhere is plastered, switch your mobile phones, and people aren't coming into the masjid thinking, I'm cutting off from dunya. They're still completely connected to dunya. I'tikaf no longer is i'tikaf. People have got their laptops in there, people have got their phones in there, completely connected to outside. That's not what i'tikaf is about. I'tikaf is a complete seclusion. Everybody now is completely connected to outside. There's no seclusion from the dunya. You know everything that's going on outside. You might as well be outside. There's no point in coming into the i'tikaf. Like, so now you've got this word with the Quran, you're sitting down to read your Quran. Amongst the etiquettes that you must always be in a state of purity, tahara, when you read the Quran. As you all know, by agreement of the A'immat al-Arba'ah, the four jurists, the four imams of fiqh, Abu Hanifa, Malik, Shaykh and Ahmed, it's haram to touch the Quran without wudu. It's haram to touch the Quran without wudu. And anybody tells you anything else, we say that's a deviant opinion. That should never be accepted, should never be propagated. It should only ever be mentioned in order to refute it as an opinion. There are those now who will say that you can touch the Quran without wudu. So that's a deviant opinion, stated in some books, not of the four methods. The four orthodox methods say haram to be touching the Quran without wudu. You can read it without wudu, but it's not adab, and adab is important. And here now you're sitting to read your Surah Al-Mulk, you're sitting to read your one page, your half a juz, your quarter of a juz, whatever you're going to read, to try and make sure you're in a state of wudu. Always try and be in a state of wudu, because if you're in a state of wudu, ibadah becomes a lot easier for you. You struggle. Your nafs, al-lawwama, your nafs that pulls you down, your ego, yourself that pulls you down and stops you, or fights you from getting close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that nafs there, like Imam Busayd in the Burda said, it's like a wild horse that needs to be tamed. It's like a wild horse that needs to be tamed. One of the most powerful tools to tame that wild horse is wudu. It's wudu. Because when you're in a state of purity, and your soul is charged, and it becomes so much more easy. It becomes so much more easy now for you to worship. You're less prone to waswasa from shaitan. You're less prone to being attacked from shaitan whilst in a state of wudu. So always try and be in a state of purity when you need to recite Quran, and ensure as a fard that when you touch the Quran you're in a state of wudu. And here in the Hanif Madhab we say even that, the Mu'tamid, the sound opinion, as recorded from the Imam himself and his two students, even translation of the Quran you must be in a state of wudu. Now there's a common opinion that I hear now which says provided half of its translation you don't need to be. That's Shafi'i Madhab. That's not Hanafi Madhab. Hanafi Madhab said if you've got a complete English translation you must be in a state of wudu to touch it. And that's recorded from Abu Hanifa as well as his two students. A direct recorded statement from the three of them saying that. So here in the Hanafi it's even more important the issue of being in a state of wudu when touching the Quran.
In terms of touching the Quran, in the Mus'haf we have cover, we have paper, and then we have words. So and touching without wudu, which is haram, does that apply to everything, or is that just the words? Or
no, touching the Quran or the Mus'haf without wudu applies to everything that's Quran. And here we don't just mean the words. And here if you have this, let's say this for let's say for this is the Mus'haf, this copy of Quran, blank page, you must be in wudu to touch it. Because the moment we say the majority of this is Quran, then we say the whole of it is Quran. Whether there's writing on there or not, even the cover, even you'll have a little marker here at the bottom, that even that's part of the Quran. Anything, the rule in Hanif, anything that's inseparable from that has a rule in the Quran. Anything, like some of them will have a casing over it, some of them will be wrapped in a cloth, so that's separable, you don't need to be in a state of wudu for that. No. But anything that's inseparable, even if there's no words on it, you must be in a state of wudu, because the whole book takes a rule in Quran, which is different to what. And let's say this is now a book on Tafsir Surah Fatiha. It's not a book of Quran. But here now you've got a verse of Quran. Alhamdulillah alladhi anzala ala abdihi al-kitab. So in order to touch that, you must be in a state of wudu. Because Quran will always be Quran, irrespective of whether it's in Quran or not. But the rest of it, you don't need to be in a state of wudu. So if you have a fiqh book, if you have a hadith book, a seerah book where an ayah of Quran's there, say ayah of Quran, you must always be in a state of wudu to touch it. But the rest of it you don't need to, unless the majority of it's Quran, whereby we say the whole book takes the ruling of Quran. Allah.
If the Quran is covered with a cloth, for example,
Yeah.
and the cloth is detachable, you can pick the whole
You can
Quran
pick
without
it up
wudu.
then. Yeah, you can pick it up. That's the important point. Is it detachable or is it inseparable? If it's inseparable, then you can't touch it. And here another issue that comes with is phones. You've got phones and laptops and electronic media now that has Quran on it. What's the hukum in there? I've asked different scholars this question here. One of my teachers, he said, or two of them said, and we treat it the same as Quran. If there's an ayah there, then if there's an ayah there, then you must be in a state of wudu. But then they'll say, like a lot of phones will have a casing over it. We say, is that separable or not? Like some of them will be separable, whereby the screen is still there. Like you'll have an outer casing. But another one of my teachers, he said no. He says it's pixels, it's not the written word. They're different things. And that to me makes more sense. So there is an ikhtilaf about that. But the point I want to highlight there is that even those who said it is, they said if it's covered, because you can get like a covering for the phone. So touching the outer covering does not affect, because it's separable. Allah. So we say you must be in a state of purity to touch the Quran. It's recommended when you're reading, and you should pay particular attention to this when you're reading the Quran, to be in a state of wudu. Select the appropriate place and time. And again, you need to emphasize appropriate place and time. Appropriate place, try and ensure that there's no najasa around. That's an important thing here now with the Quran. Try and ensure that when you read the Quran, that you're in a state of purity, and that you're in a place of purity. Because you want to elevate the Quran from anything that's dirt. You want to remove and distance the Quran from anything that is dirt. And also when we say place, you're at home, your family's there, kids are playing around. You might find it difficult. And here there's two considerations here. First of all, you've got your will with the Quran. You've got to be disciplined here now. Although there's disturbances here, you've got to be disciplined, such that you're not going to get disturbed. But at the same time, you want to expose your family to the Quran. You want to, like the Prophet he said in the hadith, don't make your houses like graves. Like there's no ibadah taking place in your house. There's no worship. Your house should be filled with the light of the Quran, filled with the light of dhikr, filled with the light of prayer. If it's not being filled by you at home, then what's your child going to see? All he sees is that his mum's at home watching the film. His mum's at home watching Coronation Street, watching EastEnders, and then you tell him you've got to read Quran, and he's not seeing his mother doing that. He's not seeing you doing that. You're just preaching a lie. You're preaching a lie. Right? The better thing for you to do is don't preach to the child, just do it yourself. Then your child will imitate you. You see in families of people who practice and pray, and mashallah, the wife's doing the same thing. See the 4-year-old child is bound down on the floor. He doesn't know what he's doing, but all he sees is that's what his parents are doing. So he'll do it. You don't need to tell that child. It's when you bring the fasad into your house, and they tell them, no, you don't do that, even though you're doing it yourself. They see hypocrites in the house. That's where the problem comes. Like one of the Shaykh, one of the scholars says, you should never have to tell your child anything. If you do it yourself, you should never have to tell your child anything. Because you read the hadith in the Shama'il, Prophet never once rebuked a child, never once rebuked in the hadith Sayyidina Anas ibn Malik, he said, I served the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam 10 years. He said, I never saw anybody like him. He said, he never raised his hand to a child or to a woman. And then someone comes say, yeah, but sometimes you have to. You say, fair enough, you have to, but that highlights a deficiency in you, not in the child. That highlights a deficiency in you. Okay, fair enough, you have to. That's because your deficiency as a father, or your deficiencies as a mother. The most perfect of the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala produced the greatest without ever having to raise a hand. Why? Why? Because there was no deficiencies in him. Because he gave completely everything that he had to his children and to all those around him. He never once said, and we all do this, when we look at this hadith in Shema, we should all hang our heads in shame, because none of us follow this prophetic sunnah. Like Sayyidina Hanif ibn Malik said, he never once said to me, after he'd asked me to do something which I didn't do, why didn't you do it? Or when he asked me not to do something and I did it, why did you do it? You do it all the time. You say to your wife, I told you not to do that. You say to your child, I told you not to do that. You tell your child, I told you to do that, why didn't you do it? Never once did he say that, the Prophet. We say it every single day. That shows deficiency within ourselves. That shows how distant we are from tarbiyah. Like we sit there and say, we're coming there when our child is 15 and we're crying that, look, he's going out there, he's doing all this haram. So it's probably because of something you did 15 years, or the lack of what you did 15 years. When it comes down to, boils down to it, right, the child is swearing. Why? Where did he hear those words from? Probably you. The child's he's behaving a bad man, probably got it from you, somebody around him. So here when we're talking about Quran, we have to look at ourselves, we have to look at our families, introduce it into our families, make them people of Quran, make them people of ibadah, so that they become people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Otherwise there's no point crying when they're 15, 16, 17, they're in their teens and said, I tried my best. And here when we look at tarbiyah, and if you try your best, there's still no guarantee. If you try your best, there's still no guarantee. What's the proof of that? Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salam, his son, in the house of a prophet, his son rejects. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about two wives of prophets that they rejected. Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salam, Sayyidina Lut alayhi salam, their wives rejected. And you can fill your house completely and there's still no guarantee. Like, I had a discussion one time with two people and they will say, if we give tarbiyah, if we ensure absolute guarantee that our children will turn out righteous, say, you can't give that guarantee. You can't give that guarantee. Because if anybody could have given that guarantee, Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salam could have done that. But he couldn't guarantee that. And his son rejected it when it came down to it. But we'll say, at the very least, you do what you're required to do. Ensure that your house is filled with light of iman and ta'ah and obedience and worship, such that nothing can fall back onto you. That you've done what you're required to do, and then make a lot of dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then the tawfiq comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make it easy for you. So select appropriate places and times. Always ensure that when you're reading your Quran, you're at a place where you're not going to be disturbed. And if the only disturbance should be from that young child who witnesses, who plays around you, sees you reading Quran, just get him comfortable with the idea of reading Quran. Don't lock your door and get your child out. Get your child used to it, let him play around you. And here we see, a brother one time told me that when he would go into sujood, his two kids would jump on his back. And he would like tell them off afterwards. He said, don't tell them off. Prophet Hassan and Hussein, they were all over the Prophet in sujood. And he lengthened the sujood such that the Sahaba thought wahi was coming down. But it was just because there were children on his back and he didn't want to disturb their play. He's worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But he's still got consideration for them. And here we don't want to drive our children away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We want to draw them, entice them, bring them to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I've seen in families where the father's sitting there and he's like, don't do anything. He's been like a jabbar, he's been like a tyrant. Children have to sit there without moving. They can't do anything. The child can't raise his voice. Let him play. Let him be around the Quran. Let him get used to the Quran. Don't let him be in such a situation where he starts to hate the Quran being read in the house. Why? Because that's the time when I can't do anything. Now when they start becoming mumayyiz, discerning, you start giving them understanding that the Quran is something serious, you don't speak around the Quran. But at that age, 4 years old, 5 years old, play. Let them enjoy being around the Quran. Let them get used to the Quran. I don't know if you remember, a few months back, when the surprise happened, the surprise conversion to Islam, what's her name, Lauren Booth, the sister-in-law of Tony Blair. And that's a side discussion, but I remember reading an article in the Daily Mail, or it was either the Mail or the Express, about her conversion. And it was a woman, Eve Ahmed, that was her name, Eve Ahmed. She was a Murtadda. She had left the fold of Islam. But here, what was interesting, there was two phenomenal and fascinating discussions that she had in there. First of all, she couldn't understand, as a woman who'd left Islam, why were white and well-off, educated women coming into Islam. She couldn't understand that. When she said, the moment I went to university, I just packed in Islam and gave it up. That's a side point here. The point that I want to raise here now is she also discussed why she left Islam. And what was it? She said because her father was Pakistani, her mother was English. She said all she remembered from her father was a list of rules that you couldn't do anything. To the point, she said, where she hated Islam. And it came to the point, the first point she left home when she went to university, she said, I rejected it completely. She said, I'll not come back to it ever. Why did she leave the fold of Islam? Because she was driven on. She was driven on. The point is, we don't want that to happen, because we're in a land where anybody can leave Islam whenever they want. And you're going to say, no, I'll guarantee you. Like here, when people are screaming and shouting in masajid about Wahhabis and Deobandis and this and that, I say, forget that. Forget about that. Talk about Iman and Kufr. Because this generation of children are going to leave Islam. Because they've been educated from childhood up to university in a Kufr institute. A secularist atheist institute, which fills them with Kufr. And we've got nothing to counter that. Our madaris and makatib are failing completely to counter the kufr that they've been exposed to. And I, having had the opportunity for many, many years to teach, listening to many people who don't know what aqidah is, who don't know what iman is. You go to a lot of imams and they'll say, no, it's not important, we just need to learn iman and mufassal. Say, maybe back in the village in Pakistan, maybe. Not when you're in the centre of kufr. Not when you're in the centre of kufr, where even your strongest imams, the kufr that you've been exposed to needs the highest level of aqidah to deal with it. And if that's the level of iman, we're looking at a generation where ridda will become the norm. Where apostasy and leaving the fold of Islam will become the norm. Why? Because people are exposed to kufr. We've said to them, go, learn in the nursery, learn in the junior school, in the primary school, in the secondary school, in the college. Who have you given them to? Kuffar. Who have you left their soul to? Kuffar. They're not even Christian. There's no sense of morality. They're not even Christian. If they were Christian, at least you'll have a sense of morality there. At least they'd have an idea of a God, even though it's not the God that you believe in. You're giving them to secularist atheists, your children. What are you going to produce at the end of it? A warped child, a warped human being, who can easily leave the fold of Islam if they're not caught. And too often now, I'm getting people come to me and say, I've got doubts about this issue in Aqidah. Or my sister's got doubts. I remember one brother said my sister's got doubts about about the hereafter, whether she believes in the next world or not. Like one brother tells me, say, at university, so many years back, brother comes to me and says, in Blackburn, there was a brother who used to go, he was from like a Jamaat family. He said, like 17 years old. He said, always used to go to the mosque and he was always doing ibadat. He said he was given a book by a Christian evangelist. About Islam, opened it, read it. He said he nearly left the fold of Islam when he read it. I said, why is it? Why did that happen? Why is it just somebody puts a point in you and your iman is virtually lost? What's happened? Why is it that the imams have failed so miserably? Masajid have failed so miserably that somebody's just exposed to one idea and he's on the verge of rejecting Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Why is that happening? Ridda will become the norm. What we need to do is ensure that we don't push people out, we keep them in. We expose them to the light of Qur'an. We expose them to the beauty of Qur'an. We teach them Aqidah, although that's a complete side point. Your children must be trained in Aqidah. They must be taught Aqidah. And not like all of this stuff about lying to the Prophet. That's important in its own context. We're talking about people who are going to be exposed to kufr. Exposed to kufr, where the very idea of God Almighty is rejected. Like, can you prove the existence of God? Can you prove that the Qur'an is the final revelation? You say, I don't need to. Maybe a child there'll come a point where he'll need to for his own iman. We have this in the books of Aqeedah, it's all there. The books of Aqeedah that are taught in the Madaris still, it's all there. There's nothing more you need. We just need people to teach it. The proof of why the Prophet is Khatam al-Nabiyyin, why is he the final message? It's all there. Proof of why we believe in the afterlife, in heaven and hell, the grave world. It's all there, it's all laid out. They've all done the work for us. All it requires is for us to understand and teach it to our children. But everybody says, no, we don't need to. You need to do it. Although it's a side discussion, it has to be done because the iman of your children is at stake. I'm teaching my own nephews and nieces now. I'll tell you one thing we do a disservice to children. I'm teaching them Aqeedah that's taught Ilm al-Kalam, theology, the books of Ash'ari, Maturidi, Aqeedah. They have no difficulty in understanding it. So we'll have a discussion about why is evolution kufr? Why must we believe in that? We can have a perfectly fine discussion. Prove to me that God Almighty exists. Perfectly fine discussion. So go away and research. Bring me a dalil that Allah subhanahu, perfectly fine. No difficulty whatsoever. The fact that it's in their minds now, they've got something now to relate to a belief in Islam. So when somebody comes and starts trying to destabilize their iman, it's there in their mind. They've got a defense mechanism in place. So coming back to the Quran, we'll say that you must have a word of Quran. My apologies, I've got this regular habit whenever I'm doing class, I always go off on tangents all the time. My apologies for that. Purity, you must be in a state of purity. Touch the Quran, we mentioned that, and reciting the Quran, recommend to be in a state of purity. Select an appropriate place and time. Use of the miswak. Before you read the Quran, always try and use the miswak. Imam Hanif rahmatullah said about the miswak, Innaha min ad-deen. Innaha min ad-deen. The miswak is from this religion. It's unique. It has khususiyah. It was fard upon the Prophet from the khasais of the Prophet. Upon his ummah, it wasn't fard. Mustahab. Him sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was fard upon him. And that's why Imam Ghazali mentioned Prophet when he went to sleep, underneath his pillow, what did he always have under his pillow when he slept? Two things. Miswak and wasiyah. And his bequest. Always had these two things. Whenever he went to sleep, he'd always have his miswak with him, and he would always have his wasiyah with him, his bequest. No. What's the significance of using the miswak? Particularly when we're reading the Quran. And whenever your breath changes, because it's the issue about breath, whenever your breath changes, after a period of time, it's always good to use the miswak, but particularly with the Quran. Why? Because we say this is the channel by which the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala come. That's part of the etiquettes of honouring the Quran. We say, why is it for you to touch, when you touch the Quran, that you must be in a state of wudu? Because you got najasa on your hand. What's the najasa? Ritual impurity. Therefore it's fard. Why when you need to do a ghusl, must you wash the whole body including the mouth? And why is it haram to read the Quran? Why is it when you need to do wudu, you can read the Quran from memory? Because we said the mouth is not najis. There's no hadith, there's no ritual impurity. With the ghusl it is. You got to wash your mouth when you do a ghusl. So therefore, because that impurity is there, you can't read when you need to do a ghusl. When you need to do wudu, there's an impurity in your hand, hence you can't touch. There's no impurity on your mouth though, hence you can recite. You can recite from memory. But we say it's not adab to do that. So therefore use the miswak, because this is the channel from which the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are coming out of. And that's why Imam Nawawi says it's also makruh. If there's any najas on your mouth to read the Quran, it's makruh. Like if your gums are bleeding, don't read the Quran. Don't read the Quran, because the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are passing over najas, over impurity. This also comes back to the adab with the Quran. Every single perspective where we can have etiquettes with the Quran, we have etiquettes. Then it says, whenever you begin reading the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَإِذَا قَرَأْتَ الْقُرْآنَ فَاسْتَعِذْ بِاللَّهِ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ الرَّجِيمِ. Ta'awudh. Always begin أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. No. And if for some reason, although the basmala normally you'll begin with أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم, the significance of the basmala is what? Is the surahs, not the beginning of the readings, the surahs. And the basmala is a fasil bayna kulli surah. It's a separator between each surah, such that Sayyidina Imam Malik said it's not even Quran. Sayyidina Imam Malik rahmatullahi says Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim is not part of the Quran. He said Jibreel alayhi salam came down with Bismillah in order for the Messenger to know that a new surah has begun. But not as a part of the Quran. The Jumhur, including Abu Hanif, said no, it's a part of the Quran. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim is a part of the Quran, such that Ahkam al-Quran apply to Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. If you see, for example, you got a poster up there with Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim and you won't, haram to touch it without wudu. Haram to touch it without wudu. Why? Because it's part of the Quran. No. If you're in a state of janaba, sexual impurity, it's haram to recite Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, unless you're doing it for dua, to begin eating food and so on. But just as Quran, it's haram to read it. Why? Because there's ruling of Quran. So the basmala is to separate between surahs, which is why, although at the beginning of the Quran, if you sit down now to read, you say, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, sunnah. No. But then after that, you don't read Bismillah, you repeat the Bismillah for new surahs. You wouldn't repeat A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, because ta'awudh is to protect you whilst, and here you're going into the hisn of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you're going into the fortress of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As you're about to start reading Quran, you're going to be attacked more by shaitan, because you're engaging in an act of devotion and worship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's going to attack you a lot more. You want protection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Inshallah, in the next section that we do next month, we'll talk a lot more about A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. But the basmala is a separator for surahs, with the exception of Surah Bara'ah, Surah At-Tawbah. And here, where we'll say, if you read Surah Al-Anfal and you go straight on to Surah Bara'ah, it's makruh to read Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. It's makruh to read it. Sayyidina Ali radhiyallahu anhu gives us a reason for that. He gives us a reason for that, because Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Abbas asked him, no, why is it that when the Mus'haf of Sayyidina Uthman was written, there's no Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim there? If you go back to the original Mus'haf, there's no Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim there. No. And you go into all of the copies of the Quran, there's no Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim there. No. Why was it written that way? No. And according to the Jumhur, the majority will say that that's because the Prophet instructed them that way. Because they say everything in the Quran, the majority of the ulama say everything in the Quran, including the order of the Quran, comes from divine instruction, which comes through the Prophet. The Sahaba did not make their own judgments in this, although there are opinions that state that. But the majority say, no, that all came through divine instruction through the Prophet. Well, he said, Sayyidina Ali said, لأنها نزلت بأمان وبراءة نزلت بالسيف. Those who hafaz the Quran, Surah Bara'ah, what's the nature of it? Bara'atun min Allahi wa Rasulihi. Very beginning, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, إِلَى الْمُشْرِكِينَ, you've got absolutely nothing to do with you. Absolute, complete, nothing to do with you. The beliefs in the mushrikeen, nothing to do. Even to such an extent that it says that any pacts that we have with them, they're broken. Any peace treaties we have with them, broken. And it says, hunt down the mushrikeen, pagans, kill them wherever you find them. No? And then it talks about waging war against the mushrikeen. And it talks about how to deal with the munafiqeen. Ughlud alayhim, be harsh and be stern with them. Without any exception, from beginning to end of the surah, it's ghalith, it's harsh, kill them, fight them, oppose the munafiqeen. With the exception of the last two verses. لَقَدْ جَاءَكُمْ رَسُولٌ مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ. And he tells you what? I mean, there's an amazing point to that even that surah, where it doesn't begin with Bismillah, because it's got nothing to do with Rahmah, because it's got nothing to do with mercy. It's telling you, and even the Prophet is going to go and fight the pagans and fight the munafiqeen, say that's not his nature though. That's not his nature. His nature is bil-mu'minina ra'ufur rahim. All of that is for the mushrikeen. All of that's for the munafiqeen. As opposed to the mu'mineen, bil-mu'minina ra'ufur rahim. So at the end of Surah Bara'ah, where Sayyidina Ali says, because Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim came down with peace, ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, mercy, the God of mercy. So this has got nothing to do with mercy, this surah. This surah has got nothing to... So this surah, nazalat bis-sayf, it was revealed with the sword, ordered to go and fight them, kill them with the sword. Nothing to do with the... with mercy, which is why with Surah Bara'ah, Surah Tawbah, no Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, because it's not appropriate and befitting ar-Rahman ar-Rahim to mention it in context of these. And remember here, and you can get that sense with the Quran, There was a Bedouin who heard the person reading the Quran. وَالسَّارِقُ وَالسَّارِقَةُ فَاقْطَعُوا أَيْدِيَهُمَا جَزَاءً بِمَا كَسَبَا نَكَالًا مِنَ اللَّهِ وَاللَّهُ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. He said that's not possible. He said that's not possible. Wallahu ghafur rahim. He said it's not possible. He said it's Quran. The person read it said it's Quran. He said it's not possible. He said a Lord who says that he's going to chop off the hands of the one who steals as a lesson for everybody else cannot be ghafur rahim at that point. He cannot be forgiving and merciful, because if he's forgiving and merciful he'll let them off and forgive them. He said that's not possible then. So when they go back to Sayyidina Umar, he said yeah. He says Wallahu azizun hakim, which is now befitting and appropriate at that point. Because the ayah is not Wallahu ghafur rahim, Wallahu azizun hakim. Allah is mighty and He's wise. That's now befitting the punishment. Which is why we say here, Surah Bara, it's not befitting Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. And you read the Quran and say Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim and tell them kill the unbelievers. Nothing to do with that. So that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala distances His name Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim from Surah Bara. So we begin by taking refuge with the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and mentioning His name. Then when you recite the Quran, that's adab. Now before you began reading the Quran, we have certain adab. You say have your wird of the Quran, set wird, be in a state of purity, select an appropriate place and time, use the miswak, begin with A'udhu Billahi Minash Shaitanir Rajeem. Now you're reading the Quran, what state should you be in? Now here there's a point to mention here, which we said before. It's an unfortunate state that too many Muslims now can't read the Quran properly. The first task is to get to a point where you can read the Quran fluently. However long it takes, can take, and out of all of the tasks that you're going to, in terms of fulfilling your obligation, in terms of knowledge, this is the one that will take the longest. Because if you're not fluent with reading the Quran, it takes time. It takes time to get used to. As a child, when you talk Quran, it takes a year, it takes 2 years. You go to madrasa, it takes time to learn it. It's going to take time. However long it takes, it's an obligation that's got to be fulfilled. Because you're going to be deficient with the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But then we'll say, okay, now you've read the Quran, or you can read the Quran. We still say there's still elements of deficiency there. Why? Because you've got an ocean in front of you, a limitless ocean in front of you. That's the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I mean, look at Surah Fatiha. What did Sayyidina Ali say about Surah Fatiha? He said, if I was to write a commentary on Surah Fatiha, 70 camels will be required to carry the books. You say, if only he'd written a commentary. That's one thing to say. He also said that about Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. If I was to write a commentary, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, 70 camels will be needed to carry the books. And just Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, 70 camels to carry the books, as Sayyidina Ali on his explanation on Bismillah. What's that telling you? There's an ocean there. There's an ocean, a completely unexplored ocean. If you can read, but you don't understand, there's an ocean there that you're not tasting. Although we'd say, Alhamdulillah, if you can read without understanding, it's still good. It's still good. And it still will be a source of salvation. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told Sayyidina Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, when he saw Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, as Imam al-Ghazali mentioned in his Ihya, he said, I saw Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala 99 times in a dream. The 100th time, I asked him, Biman najatu ya Rab? What's the cause of salvation, O Lord? What is the cause of salvation? He says, Bi kitabi. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, through my book. He says, Bi fahmin or bi ghayri fahmin. He says, Bi fahmin wa bi ghayri fahmin. Imam Ahmad then asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, says, with understanding or without understanding? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, with understanding and without understanding. Meaning, if you read the Quran without understanding, and you're reading and it's a constant thing, we say, Alhamdulillah. It's a beautiful thing. You said, still rise above that. But that's the beginning point. It still will be a cause of your salvation Yawm al-Qiyamah, because you read it. And the Quran will be your shafi' Yawm al-Qiyamah. It will intercede with you on the Day of Judgment. Now because you read it regularly, but we say, rise now. Rise. Learn Arabic. Once you've learned how to read it, now engage in a long process of learning Arabic. It will take you time to learn it, because once you start understanding the Quran, the ocean starts opening up. And I'll say this because I've experienced this. When you read the Quran, I've experienced a stage where I would read the Quran without understanding it, and then a stage where I would read it with understanding. I mean, understanding the general sense of the meanings, There's a world of difference. There's a massive... When you stand there, you listen to Qari Abdul Basit taking you... I always remember Surah Maryam, one of the most amazing recitals of the Quran. And when it takes you through the story of how Sayyidina Isa was born, وَذْكُرْ فِي الْكِتَابِ مَرْيَمْ. And when you listen to Qari Abdul Basit, for example, it's a beautiful voice, but one thing you don't realise, he's actually taking you through the story itself. The way he's reading the melodies is changing in relation to the stories, to the story itself. And he's bringing to life the story. But in order to do that, you need to open up the Quran. Because at that point, you're just caught up on the voice, which is beautiful, and the words, which is beautiful. So you go beyond that. So there has to be stages in terms of your relationship with the Quran. First thing is fluency, reading the Quran. Second is read the Quran. Third is understand the Quran. Understand the Quran. And that's why we now go on to and when you're reading the Quran, what does it need? It needs you to be in a state of humility. Tawadu. Remember, هذا كلام ربي. As one of the Salaf used to say, he would go into a hal, he would go into a spiritual state when he would do wudu, just to read Quran. And for us, we would just pick up the book, open it, read. And he would go into a different state completely. Say, هذا كلام ربي. This is the words of my Lord. This is not normal. This is not normal. Same as the Prophet ﷺ. Like his wife would say, we'd be sitting with him and he's with us normally, as a husband would be with the wife. When the adhan goes, he's gone. He's gone. He's not with us anymore. He's in a different realm completely at that point. See, the Sahabi, he's going to say, he's in a different realm completely. When the Quran is being recited now, he's approaching the Quran. He's not just reading a few words. This is the speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they had a relationship with the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They would go into it knowing exactly what they were going into. That this is, like one of the Salaf said, he said, when you read the Quran, he said, it's like you're opening letters that your Lord has sent to you. Just as the mail comes to you through the letterbox, you open the mail and you're eager to find out what's come to you. So that's the Quran. These are rasa'il min rabbik. These are letters that are coming from your Lord. Every single word is letters that are coming from your Lord. Letters mean mail that's coming from your Lord. Treat it as that. Like you've got a yearning desire to know, what's my Lord telling me in this letter? Next letters come. Every chapter is another mail that's come to you from your Lord. What's he telling me this time? They would reflect and repeat and repeat and repeat the verses, saying, what's coming to me from that? Right? It really fascinates me that Surah Al-Zilzal, إِذَا زُلْزِلَتِ الْأَرْضُ زِلْزَالَهَا. We read it all the time. Right? We read it all the time. Doesn't bother us. Doesn't affect us. We don't stop. MashaAllah, it's good. We read it. We get reward for every single letter, 10 rewards. One person said he came to a masjid in Baghdad and he found Imam Abu Hanif. He said at the beginning of the night reading إِذَا زُلْزِلَتِ الْأَرْضُ زِلْزَالَهَا. He said he came back before Fajr. He said he found him there repeating فَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ خَيْرًا يَرَهُ وَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ شَرًّا يَرَهُ. He said he was weeping to the point where his beard was soaked with tears. And he's saying, oh Lord, he said, if you forgive Nu'man, that's his name, Nu'man ibn Thabit, he said, that's enough for me. If you forgive Nu'man, that's enough for me. Meaning, whether you give me Jannah or not is not my concern. All I want is that you save me from hellfire. What's got him to that state? فَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ خَيْرًا يَرَهُ. Whoever does an atom's weight, and dharra here is not literally atom, it's the smallest entity that you can imagine. فَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ. Whoever sees an atom weight of good will see it, or whoever does an atom weight of good will see it, whoever does an atom weight of evil will see it. That's got him now. He's in a hal now. And he's worried about himself, such that he's crying all night long. And he's only concerned at that point is save me from the punishment hellfire. Whether you put me to Jannah or not, save me from your punishment. That's somebody now who's in a reflective state. Look at the Prophet in the Sunan Ibn Majah. Says one whole night he's repeating one ayah. إِن تُعَذِّبْهُمْ فَإِنَّهُمْ عِبَادُكَ وَإِن تَغْفِرْ لَهُمْ فَإِنَّكَ أَنْتَ الْعَزِيزُ الْحَكِيمُ. If you forgive them, they're your slaves. And he cries all night. And here, what's that? Yawm al-Qiyamah, Sayyidina Isa standing in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَلَنَسْأَلَنَّ الْمُرْسَلِينَ. And we're going to ask those those who were sent the message, we're going to ask them, did you convey the message? What Sayyidina Isa asked? Did you tell your people to worship yourself and your mother as gods besides me? They're going to be asked, did you convey the message? No. Sayyidina Isa, and he's in a state of fear at that point. Fear of what? The jalal of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because he did his job. He conveyed the message. He had nothing to do with all of Christianity and Trinitarianism that came. He had nothing to do with that whatsoever. He said, مَا قُلْتُ لَهُمْ إِلَّا مَا أَمَرْتَنِي. I only told them what you ordered me to tell them. What does he say at the end? It's your affair. And I've done my job. You're the king. Do whatever you want. They're your slaves. إِن تُعَذِّبْهُمْ فَإِنَّهُمْ عِبَادٌ. If you punish them, they're your slaves. If you forgive them, وَإِن تَغْفِرْ لَهُمْ فَإِنَّكَ أَنْتَ الْعَزِيزُ الْحَكِيمُ. Then you're the mighty, you're the wise. It's your business. The Prophet is all night long weeping over that. Now, and hear the question, how many times have we cried when we read the Quran? How many times have we cried when we read the Quran? Prophet ordered us to cry when we read the Quran. He said, fake it. He said, اقرأوا القرآن وابكوا فإن لم تبكوا فتباكوا. So read the Quran whilst you're crying and weeping. And if you can't do that, if you can't cry and weep, he said, tabako means feign it, fake it. Take an onion to your eyes, make yourself cry. Make yourself cry. Because the Prophet ordered you to cry when you read the Quran. That state becomes very important. Shall we continue next time about the etiquettes we read in the Quran, and we'll go on to the ta'awudh. And Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, the next session that we'll do next week, inshallah. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Is there any question anybody wants to ask, you're welcome to do so.
When you have a cassette or a CD with Quranic recitation, how do you handle that? How do you handle the cassette or the CD?
Actual physical carrying it? No, I mean, there's no requirement to be in a state of wudu. Whether it's CDs, whether it's tapes, there's no requirement to be in a state of wudu. Because there's no written word directly there. There's no requirement.
What about
although I would say to that, there's no requirement to be in a state of wudu, but it shouldn't be just placed around and flow, because it carries within it the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a voice form. But you would need to be in a state of wudu.
Sorry about that. Continuing from that, now obviously cassettes are becoming a thing of the past. Now if you've got cassettes with Quranic recitals, how do you dispose of them?
That's not a problem here. It's not the same as the Quran because you've got written word there. No. There's no issue in terms of how you dispose of it. I mean, the best thing is delete it completely first. If you want to be safe, delete it completely first and then dispose of it as you dispose of anything. No.
What about Braille Qurans?
I asked Scott on that one. He said they need to be in a state of wudu for that. The blind person needs to be in a state of wudu for a Braille Quran. More so with the Hanif, you say transliteration, translation, they need to be in a state of wudu because it's a representation of the Arabic. And I researched, I got in contact with the Braille Club, and because here the issue, is there different Brailles depending upon languages? And they said yes there is. You'll have an Arabic Braille, you'll have an English Braille, you'll have a French Braille and so on. So it becomes more of an issue if it's Arabic Braille because that's a representation of the Quran.
And does that hold for someone who can see but doesn't understand Braille?
Yeah.
But knows that this is a Braille Quran?
Yeah, it would hold it because that's a representation of the Quran. Wallah. Finish on that, inshallah. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin, sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun ala al-mursalin walhamdulillah.